Rejected by her mate, she left forever. The Alpha King crossed every border to bring her home. Elara Marin had always known she was invisible. Not in a sad way, not anymore. She had simply learned, over years of quiet living, that some people are born into the spotlight, and others are born to hold it steady for someone else. She was the healer's daughter, the girl who knew which herbs stopped bleeding and which roots eased pain. She was useful, she was kind, and she was, by every measure the Ashvale Pack used to judge worth, completely ordinary. So when the full moon ceremony came, she did not stand near the front. She stood at the back, near the tree line, watching the lanterns sway over the crowd. She was there because attendance was required. She was not there with hope. That was the cruelest part of what happened next. The bond did not ask her permission. It never does. One moment she was watching the Alpha King take his place at the stone platform, tall, broad-shouldered, wearing the silver chain of his rank over dark leathers, and the next moment, the world went absolutely quiet. The noise of the crowd, the crackling of the lanterns, the rustle of wind through the pines, all of it disappeared. And in that silence, she felt something warm and golden pull through her chest like a thread being drawn tight. Her eyes found his across the crowd without trying. Caelan Voss, Alpha King of the Ashvale Pack, the most powerful man in 5 territories. He was looking directly at her. For one single moment, something moved across his face that she could not name. It was not happiness, but it was real, unguarded and surprised, the face of a man caught off balance for the first time in his life. Then the mask came down. She watched it happen. She watched him straighten his shoulders, lift his chin, and become the king again. The crowd had gone silent too, feeling the shift in energy. Everyone was watching. Everyone was waiting. When he spoke, his voice was steady and cold, and carried across the entire clearing without any effort at all. "I reject you," he said. "You are not what this throne requires." Elara heard every word. She did not fall apart. She found, in that moment, that she was made of something steadier than she had believed. Her chest hurt. The bond ached the way a muscle tears, but her feet were still under her, and her hands were not shaking. She looked at him for 3 long seconds. She let herself see him clearly, this man who had just used her like a public announcement. Then she dipped her head once, very slightly, and she turned and walked away through the crowd. People parted for her. Some looked at the ground. One woman touched her arm briefly as she passed. She didn't know who it was, and didn't stop to find out. She walked home through the dark trees and sat on her mother's old wooden chair, and listened to the forest, and didn't cry until the sun came up, and even then, she cried only once. Then she stood, washed her face, and began to think clearly. She gave herself 3 days. On the first day, the cottage window was scratched with something sharp in the night. On the second day, she was quietly removed from the healer's schedule without explanation. On the third day, she packed a single bag, her mother's journal, her herb pouch, a change of clothes, and every coin she had saved over 4 years. And before the sun rose on the 4th morning, she crossed the northern border alone. The bond pulsed once behind her, like a goodbye no one asked for. Then it went still. She did not look back, not because she was not hurting, but because looking back had never once helped anyone move forward. Veymark was not beautiful. It was practical. Dusty roads, mismatched buildings, a market square that smelled like pine resin and wood smoke. It sat far enough outside Pack territory that no Alpha's authority reached it, and the people who lived there had all, in one way or another, chosen freedom over belonging. They were not warm people at first. They watched strangers carefully and gave trust the way a person gives away their last coin, only when they were sure. Elara was patient. She rented a single back room from an older woman named Dossie, who asked no questions and made very strong tea. She set up a small table near the window and began offering remedies for the things people quietly needed, but couldn't always name. Sleep tonics, pain relief, medicines for coughs that had lasted too long. She charged fairly. She kept her word. She showed up. After 6 months, the town began to soften toward her. After a year, she had a small shop on the main road with a painted wooden sign that read simply, Elara, Remedies and Care. After 3 years, she had a home. And she had Senna. Senna was 2.5 years old, with round cheeks and vivid gold eyes that Elara did not examine too closely in the mirror. She was fast on her feet, fearless, and absolutely convinced that every cat in Weimar was her personal friend. She called the shop her helping place, and dragged a small wooden step stool around to reach the lower herb jars. She could already identify lavender by smell. Elara raised her quietly and well. She did not tell Senna stories about kings. She told her stories about women who built things with their hands and kept going when the road was hard. She told her that being strong did not always mean being loud. She told her that a person's worth had nothing to do with who chose them or who didn't. She believed every word. She had learned them the hard way. What Elara did not know was that 3 territories away, in a cold stone hall full of firelight and political pressure, a king was unraveling. The council had not told Caelan the truth, not all of it. They had told him that a rejected mate bond would dissolve cleanly within a year, leaving both parties free. They had been certain of this. They had presented it as fact, with documentation and the testimony of 3 senior wolves who all agreed that it was simply a matter of time. They were wrong. The bond between Caelan and Elara had not dissolved, because Elara had never completed her side of the rejection. She had accepted his words and walked away, but she had never spoken the counter-rejection, never said the words that would close the door from her end. Whether she had done this deliberately or simply had no reason to give him even that small gift, Caelan did not know. What he knew was that the bond was still there, buried and bleeding, and it did not quiet. His sleep became unreliable. He would wake in the early hours with the feeling of amber eyes looking at him, or the scent of something clean and herbal that no one around him wore. His concentration, once his greatest strength, began to slip at the edges. He sat through council meetings with the distant expression of a man hearing a sound no one else could detect. His wolf was worse. In 3 years, Caelan had always maintained absolute control, the stillness of a predator at rest, patient and unreadable. Now his wolf paced. It pressed against the inside of him like something caged, restless and insistent, and furious in a way that had no clean target. He dismissed 2 advisors who mentioned it. He ran farther each morning. He worked longer hours. None of it helped. When the arranged match with a high-born she-wolf from the Eastern Territory finally fell apart, she had chosen a different alpha, someone warmer, and Caelan could not blame her. The senior council member, an old wolf named Bren, who had served 3 kings before him, sat across from him in the firelight and told him the truth he had been protecting him from. A half-rejected mate bond did not fade. It compounded. And in a wolf of Caelan's rank and bloodline, without resolution, it would eventually cost him everything: his clarity, his authority, his health. The wolf self and the human self would stop cooperating. It had happened before, in history, to kings who had tried to refuse what fate had given them. Caelan sat very still for a long time after Bren finished speaking. Then he said quietly, "Where is she?" Bren looked at him carefully. "We don't know. She crossed the northern border 3 years ago. She left no trail." Caelan stood up. "Then I'll find one." He rode without ceremony. No guards, no pack banners, no royal formality. He wore plain riding clothes and told the council he would return when he returned. He followed the northern road for 4 days, stopped at border towns, spoke to traders and neutral ground merchants, and anyone who moved between territories, and might have seen a woman with silver-streaked hair traveling alone 3 years ago. Most people had nothing. A few remembered something small, a direction, a name mentioned in passing. He followed each thread patiently, with none of the impatience he had shown in the years before. Something had changed in him on this road. He could feel it. He was not riding north as a king, retrieving what was his. He was not even sure what he was doing. He only knew that he had to find her and say the things he had never said, even if she closed the door in his face afterward. It was a traveling spice merchant, camped at the edge of a pine ridge, who finally gave him the name. "Weimar," the old man said, warming his hands over a small fire. "Woman with amber eyes, silver in her hair, excellent with herbs. She's got a shop there, been there a few years, has a little girl now." Caelan's hand stilled on his cup. "A little girl," he said. "Gold eyes," the merchant said, not looking up. Unusual-looking child. Very fast. Caelan did not speak again that evening. He arrived in Veymark on a gray morning, the kind where the sky cannot decide between rain and cloud. The town looked exactly like what it was, a place built by people who had stopped waiting for someone else to help them. He tied his horse at the edge of the market square and walked, following the pull of the bond the way a man follows a light in the dark. It had been silent for 3 years. Now it was humming steadily, growing warmer with every step. The apothecary sign was simple and hand-painted. He stopped in front of it and stood there for a moment, alone in the quiet street, and felt something shift in his chest, something that had been locked tight for 3 years. He opened the door. She was behind the counter, grinding something with a small stone pestle, her hair tied back, wearing a plain blue work dress. She did not look up immediately, the way people don't when a door opens in the middle of a task. Then she looked up. The bond roared back to life between them. After 3 years of silence, it came back with the force of a wave that had been held back too long. He saw her absorb it, watched her go perfectly still, her hands stopping mid-motion, her face going carefully, deliberately calm. She set down the pestle. "Caelan," she said, "not your majesty, not Alpha King, just his name," in a voice that gave away nothing. He had planned words. He had spent 4 days on the road finding them. Standing in front of her now, they dissolved. "I've been looking for you," he said. "I know how borders work," she said quietly. "You could have found me sooner, if you'd looked sooner." That was fair. He had no answer for it. He told her the truth. About the bond. About what the council had hidden from him. About the 3 years of slow deterioration he had tried to push through alone. He told her that he had been wrong. Not because fate had punished him for it, but because he had looked at her in that clearing and chosen fear over everything he felt. He told her that he had stood in front of hundreds of people and used his voice like a weapon against someone who had done nothing to deserve it, and that he had known, the moment she turned and walked away, that he had made the worst mistake of his life. He did not ask her to forgive him on his schedule. He did not tell her what he needed. He said only what was true. She listened without interrupting. When he finished, the room was very quiet. Then the back door flew open, and a small, very fast child came running in, stopped dead at the sight of a tall stranger, and stared up at Caelan, with round gold eyes that looked exactly like looking in a mirror. The silence that followed was the loudest thing Caelan had ever heard. He crouched down slowly, so he was at her level. Senna stared at him with the fearless assessment of a child who had not yet learned to pretend. She looked at his eyes. She looked at her mother. She looked back at him. "You're very tall," she said. "I am," he agreed. She considered this, then went to her step stool and climbed up to reach a jar of dried lavender, apparently satisfied. Caelan straightened slowly and looked at Elara. There were no more speeches left in him. She could see it. The complete absence of performance. The stripped-down truth of a man who had ridden across 4 territories and still arrived with nothing to offer except himself. "She's 3, Elara said. "She has been healthy and loved, and she has never lacked for anything." "Because of you," he said. "Yes," she said simply. "Because of me." He stayed in Veymark. He did not announce himself as king. He rented a small room at the edge of town, fixed things that needed fixing, and showed up, not to win, not to perform, but simply to be present, in a way he never had been before. He met Senna slowly, on her terms. He sat with Elara in the evenings, and talked to her the way he should have talked to her from the beginning, honestly, without armor. Weeks passed. The bond waited patiently, like a fire banked low. It was on a quiet evening, when Senna had fallen asleep between them on the cottage rug, and the fire had burned to warm coals, that Elara spoke the words that completed the bond. Softly, with no ceremony, just the truth, finally released from the place she had been keeping it. The warmth that moved through them both was nothing like what he had expected. It was not grand. It was simply the feeling of something long broken finally, gently, being set right. He exhaled slowly. "I'll go wherever you are," he said. "If you come back, I will build Ashvale into something worthy of you. If you don't, I will come here every day for the rest of my life and be grateful you let me in the door." Elara looked at the fire for a long moment. Then she looked at him. This man who had once been only a king, and was now, at last, something more honest than that. "We'll see," she said. And from Elara Marin, who had once walked away from everything and built a life with her own 2 hands, those 2 words were more than enough.